In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a popcorn stitch pattern where the popcorns are in a zigzag pattern. For this pattern, you need an odd number of stitches, and I have 15. First row will be a single crochet row, so we're going to chain one and do a row, skip it, and then do a row of single crochet stitches. Here we have a row of single crochet stitches. Now we're going to chain 2 and turn. We're not going to count this turning chain as a first stitch. We're going to do a first popcorn stitch into the first stitch. So we're going to make 5 double crochet stitches into this one stitch here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now take the hook out, put it in the first stitch under both loops, grab your drop loop and put it through. Okay, make it kind of tight. Chain 1. Now you're going to skip 1 stitch and start your pattern all over. Make the next popcorn stitch into this stitch. 5 double crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, put your hook into the first stitch and then in the loop, and then pull your loop through and do chain 1. Now continue doing the same way. Skip 1 stitch, popcorn stitch, and chain 1. We have an odd number of stitches, so the last stitch will be a popcorn stitch. Okay? I'm almost done with the second row. I did a popcorn stitch, chained 1, so now we have to skip 1, and you have to do a popcorn stitch into this last stitch here, last single crochet. Four, so 1 more stitch, 5, 'Okay, so here we go. Now you're finished with the second row. The next row will be a row of single crochet stitches again. Okay, so we chained 1, we chain 1 here, we turn, and the first stitch that you need to get into is this stitch right here. Okay, so don't make a mistake of skipping it. This is your first stitch. So it's 1, this is the second one, it's kind of tight. This is that chain 1. Okay. This is the next one. Large big loops above the popcorn stitch of the previous row. And here's the next one. So keep going with single crochet stitches until the end of the row. There's a little trick with this fabric. When you get to the end of the row, and this is the loop, the large loop, which is above the popcorn stitch there, you do a single crochet, and that tells you you have 2 more to do. Okay, but you can only see this one stitch here. That's the chain 1 that we did after the first popcorn stitch. So you do a single crochet there, and now you have to do 1 more stitch. Okay, because we have 14 now, and we have to have 15. So technically your last stitch is this first stitch. Okay, but it's kind of hard to get into. You'll be in the middle of the popcorn stitch, so I suggest you leave it and do 1 more stitch, 1 more single crochet stitch into the last stitch. Okay, it's just easier to do. It does the same job, and you know, looks the same way. So here you go. You finished your 3rd row. Now we're going to chain 2 and turn for our next row. Now the 4th row, we will change our pattern a little bit. We'll switch it backwards. Okay, we're gonna start with chaining 1, skipping a stitch, and doing a popcorn stitch into the 2nd stitch. 1, 2. What this will do, make sure you get into the both loops here. Okay, this will make sure that our popcorn stitches are in the zigzag pattern. Okay, so we did 3, 4, 5. Okay, now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put your hook right here into the first stitch and pull your loop. Okay, chain 1 and continue in the same manner. Skip 1 stitch, and do, hold on, I forgot about the yarn over. Okay, so skip 1 stitch and do a popcorn stitch into the next stitch. Okay, so now pull your loop, chain 1, and keep going in the same manner. Okay, let's see what's happening here. And our popcorn stitches are in a zigzag pattern. Okay, so let's continue the row and see how it looks like. When you get to the end of the row, you did your popcorn stitch, and then you have 1 more stitch to do. So for symmetry, And to make sure you have all your stitches, we're gonna do a simple double crochet stitch. So don't chain one, just do in these two loops right here a double crochet stitch. Okay, make sure you go into both loops here, 1 and 2. Okay, this is just to make sure you have all your stitches and for symmetry. Okay, now you're going to chain 1 and we're going to do single crochet stitches into every stitch here, and you have to make sure you have all your stitches. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, if it's a large, large project, you're not going to be able to count every single time, but when you get closer to the end, you'll just recognize which is the last stitch, and I'll show you. Okay, when you are at the end of the row, okay, this is kind of the last visible stitch. Okay, it's 13 stitches here, okay, but this is the chain 1 that we did after the first popcorn stitch, but before that there is a loop from that stitch, remember, where we have to do our single crochet stitch, and there's also that extra chain 1 that we did after the turning chain. So don't forget to go into there and do, or you can just go under the chain, it's just easier, and do your last single crochet stitch. Okay, again, we started this row with chaining 1 first and then started doing our sequence. So this is why our last single crochet stitch has to go into the top of the chain or just under it. Okay, all right, this is to make sure we get all our stitches. Now we're going to chain 2 and start with popcorn stitch row again, but this time we are making our first popcorn stitch into the first stitch. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, put your hook into the first stitch under both loops. Get your loop, pull through. Okay, now chain 1. Skip 1 stitch and continue making your popcorn stitches in the same pattern. Popcorn stitch, chain 1, skip 1. And you see, this popcorn stitch is exactly where it was in the second row. Okay, so let's make one more. chain 1, skip 1 and go to the next. And in this row, the last stitch will be a popcorn stitch. Okay, so I finished our third row of popcorn stitches, and you see the pattern starting to form. They're kind of in a zigzag pattern. Okay, so after this row, we do a row of single crochet stitches again. So we chain 1, turn, and do a row of single crochet stitches. And don't forget about that trick at the end of the row, where we do 2 stitches into the last stitch. And I'll show it to you again. Okay, so here we are at the end of the row, and again, you only see this one stitch, but you have to do 2 stitches, remember? Okay, so instead of going into this first stitch, we just do 2 single crochet stitches into this last stitch. It has the same effect, it's easier, and does what we need, you know. Okay, so from this point on, you just continue the same pattern. You chain 2 and turn. Okay, so to get this pattern, this zigzag pattern, you repeat from row 2 to row 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. You repeat these 4 rows and you get this pattern. Okay, so now this row will be as this row, where we chain 1 first, then we skip 1 stitch and we do the cluster stitch into the next. Okay, so when we're almost done with this row, at the end we do, in the last stitch right after this popcorn stitch, we do a double crochet stitch for symmetry. Okay, so I'll do a couple more rows and show you how it's gonna look. Okay, so here's a finished sample, and you can see our popcorn stitches are in a zigzag pattern. It's a very nicely textured stitch. If you want the pattern for a straight line popcorn stitch, like this one, I'll post a link for you to watch how to do this pattern. Okay, so stay tuned. Happy crocheting!